Here we go.
Okay, great. So welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks for your flexibility. I know we shifted this out a month just to give us some more time to coordinate with our partner agencies, specifically the various departments at the city. We also, like I mentioned, I don't know if you've heard, but we hired a construction manager, general contractor that's going to be on board. It's Guho Corp, and they'll be helping us with pre-construction, making sure that we're designing things that can be constructed, and then also starting that early planning on how we're going to sequence work once we do get into construction. So they'll be a great asset to the team as we go through design here. We also had 2 public open houses in September, and Christine will dive into some of that feedback, and we had a public survey. And yeah, we have our preferred concept design to share with you today, and we're really excited to get some final feedback from the group. So thanks for joining us today, and looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Amy, and good morning, everybody. And also, I just want to remind everybody, if you don't mind hitting mute right now, and then as you guys have comments or questions, please unmute and or raise your hand. That'd be great. So we've done a lot of work since the last time we've seen you. And so we have a lot of information that we actually, before it was a lot of kind of presenting material to you. We're in the final stages of this concept design. And we have a lot of questions that we'd like your feedback today. So we're going to have a couple of different slides, and we'll stop in the middle, talk about those things, get your feedback, and then move on. So I'm going to go pretty quickly so we have enough time to get your feedback on all of these. And then I say that, and then let's see if my computer will actually, there we go. So we last met with you with the design alternatives, kind of some different ideas. We have our preferred design now, and we're meeting with you. The next steps, we'll take your feedback and augment the design, and then present it to the CCDC board, City Council, and ACHD Commission for all of their approval. Once we get all of that, then we submit for the design review. And because this is all happening kind of right before Thanksgiving, we're going to wait until early December to present our final design to the public in a public open house. So first, just like Amy said, we had our public survey, and I wanted to go through that really quickly. Thanks to everybody who contributed to that. So first question was, what brings you to the Linen Blocks? And probably most of you know it's the restaurant, bars, and the retail stores. Living and working down there, you probably have seen that and experienced that yourself. So that was really great to understand that people are coming down here and are doing an active participation within the blocks. The second question was, which elements would make the largest impact in creating a distinct identity for the Linen Blocks? And the highest one, or highest 3, were the parklets, public art, and then planting areas and specialty site furnishings, and we're neck and neck with specialty concrete coming out the heading up the rear there. Next one was, which public art opportunities would you like to see in the Linen Blocks? And the highest voted was the historic Boise neon sign collection. Next were the art ports, then expanded art frames on the walls, and then a landmark billboard sign. How important are the native planting areas in creating an inviting pedestrian experience within Linen Blocks? It was about 74% said that that was very high. And then which of the proposed traffic calming strategies are most important to you? They were all pretty much the same: the raised intersection, the curb bulbs, and reducing driveways. So we've been able to accommodate all of those in the preferred design. And there are numerous parking lots within the Linen Blocks. And so we asked the public, what is your preferred strategy to screen those parking lots from the sidewalk? overwhelmingly, people wanted planting areas to buffer between the sidewalk and the parking lot. The second highest was screening and walls. And then a few 5% said, nothing, we don't want to see anything there. We like the parking lot just butting up against the sidewalk. So you'll see further in the presentation kind of how we evaluated all of these elements and how we incorporated them into our design. So any questions about all that information? That was just kind of information. We're going to get into the where we need your feedback in just a second, but I just want to stop there and see if there's any questions. Okay, if you do have any, just put it in the chat and Amy can watch that and call that out. So let's take a look at parking and circulation. So we heard your feedback, said, hey, parking is really important. We want to maximize those as much as possible. We also have to adhere to the proposed ADA stalls that there was a study done by the city, and our blocks are right here. Actually, let me see if I can get an annotate tool. Our blocks are right here. And so as you can see, we have quite a few ADA stalls that we need to provide. And so we took a look at our design and met with an accessibility advisory committee. They were extremely helpful in locating and helping us identify which areas those should be. So all in all, we were able to regain some parking stalls. So currently we have 102 parking stalls available along Grove, and we added some along the side street, which I'll show you in just a second. There we have 11 ADA stalls, which are scattered throughout the blocks. And we'll show you how incorporating those in our kind of innovative design is enabling us to create a really great public realm, and we'll show you that in just a second. To maximize the stalls, because of how some of the stalls are oriented, we were also able to squeeze in some motorcycle stalls. We might also be able to put more motorcycle stalls in. We'd like to kind of get your feedback on that, but we're trying to squeeze out every single nook and cranny for parking. So throughout all of these sections, I'm going to focus on a few different blocks to show you how the design has evolved. And so this is the block between 15th and 16th, and we're going to take a couple of sections through these areas to show you how it's all kind of coming together here. So this may look pretty reminiscent of what we had shown before. But with one thing that you may not be noticing, we were able to get ACHD to agree to reducing our travel lanes down to 10 feet. This was imperative in getting all of the parking stalls and the ADA parking stalls on both sides of the street, and also increasing our pedestrian and parking within that public realm. So we are very excited that they supported us in that. So you'll see how that works throughout the sections coming forward. So we're cutting through right here at an intersection, and we have these large planting and curb bulbs. Then we still have the 5-foot bike lane. We had to reduce the site furnishing / planting zone a little bit down to the 4-foot required space by the city, in order to maintain the 8-foot sidewalk, which also allows you to have some spill out retail, things like that. So the other thing you'll notice here is an example of a buffered wall and buffered planting for existing parking lots. So we can talk about that in just a few minutes, how that might work on your specific parking lot designs. Now, this is the block between 14th and 15th. We have been working very diligently with the property owners in order to maximize the parking in this area. So through that effort, we have jogged the sidewalk and the bike lane over actually into the private property. So the city is going to have a public easement in that area, and they're working through all of that in order to gain back in angled parking. This maximizes the parking within this block. As you can see, we have to provide front end pull-in ADA stalls, so that enabled us to squeeze in a little bit of motorcycle parking within this to maximize the area. And so take a look at that section really quickly. What that looks like is this is pretty much a typical block on the right-hand side where we have our 10-foot travel lane in the middle here, 8-foot parking, 5-foot walk-off strip / planting strip, 5-foot bike lane, 4-foot planting with pet rail, and then an 8-foot sidewalk. And then on our unique angular parking, we have, again, starting from center, the 10-foot travel lane, 18 feet of back-in parking, our walk-off strip, bike lane, planting with pet rails, and the 8-foot sidewalk. So you can see how the city is working with this private property owner to maximize the parking within the district, and then also to free up some open space for outdoor retail plazas. So question for you guys, this is the first of our questions. We have maximized the parking. Now we would like to hear, like, how do you currently do your delivery locations? So there's a couple of different options for property owners. You can have deliveries off of the alley, by the parking lots, or we can work with the city to designate different loading zones. So maybe you know that deliveries happen every day between 3 and 5 or 6 and 8, and we could designate certain parking spots to be load zone only during those hours, and then parking the rest of the hours. So just kind of wanted to get your sense, or a sense from you, where do deliveries typically happen right now?
Feel free to unmute yourself and
So this is Steve Welsh. So for us, we have a loading door on 12th Street, and that is where we receive any shipments. There is no access from the alley. The tenant, the Presbyterian Church, they do have a door in the back, so they can receive things from the alley.
Okay. So somebody could park, like somebody that's delivering something could park, or either on the numbered streets or within the alley, and then pull up for them. But then for you, it's really off of 12th.
Yeah, we've got the curb cut and the loading door that's been there since the building was built, I believe.
Perfect. Thanks, James.
This is Elizabeth from the Modern, and we prefer to have our deliveries in the alley because the access to the front door of the Modern has a porte cochere above it, and it's too low, it gets hit constantly. So pulling in and out of that parking lot is very difficult for deliveries. So we try to get them to go down the alley as much as we can and come in the back.
Great. Anybody else? We'll continue to think about kind of how that would work, and as we work through, the parking regulations, we'll circle back with business owners to kind of coordinate that. We want to make sure that we understand that you are able to get your deliveries in a timely fashion and make it easy for you. And also we want to ensure ACHD, that there won't be giant commercial trucks parked in the middle of Grove Street. So we just want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with the situation. Okay. So we also talked just a few slides earlier about parking lot screening. So we think it's really imperative to create a welcoming public realm. And with that, it's really nice to have a buffer between cars and people. We've done that on the street side, and now we want to work with the private property owners to do it on the property side. And so what we've done here is indicated some suggested areas of buffering. All of this would happen on the private property. And so, Amy, can you talk a little bit about how we can maybe coordinate that?
Yeah, so CCDC, we cannot actually expend funds on private property. We can only do improvements within the public right of way. But on previous projects, we have had success in property owners approaching the contractor and working out a deal that they could do some private property improvements directly with that property owner while they're out there, just for some efficiency and maybe some cost savings to get some cheaper improvements if you are interested in doing improvements on your private property. So that's something that you could approach GUHO with as we get closer to construction, if there's improvements that you would like to see, such as these screenings that Christine's talking about.
And we're anticipating getting a survey in the next month. And so once we have the survey, we'll understand better what elements are kind of straddling that property line. So as you've seen, all of our sections, our sidewalk starts right at the property line. We have a feeling that some elements that may be straddling that. So that might be planting, that might be site walls. So we're going to kind of dial all that in once we get the survey back. But so here, a lot of these planting areas may already exist and walls may already exist within this. So for example, the planting out here between 15th and 16th is already there. The wall next to the Linen building is already there. Wall next to the Modern is already there. So we're kind of trying to create this pattern of buffering along Grove Street. So again, the planting along the Idaho Power parking lot is already there, as well as some planting here. So just adding a few site walls might be a really nice way to buffer the streetscape. Any questions on any of that just showed? Okay, so now
This is Steve Welsh. I was just curious. So that angled parking, will that be open to the public or is that private parking?
No, it's public parking,
Public.
but we're exploring some regulations that would help with turnover, potentially doing some 20-minute stalls for those quick grab and go stops at like the liquor store or the beauty supply store, and just being strategic on how it's regulated so that we can serve multiple needs, including those business retails, but providing still public parking.
You know what? And I also forgot to show on that. Sorry, let me get out of this really quickly. We also added some parking over to the side. We converted some parallel stalls here because we had enough room to have back in parking here too. So we're trying to maximize as much as possible. We looked at doing that on this other side, but based on just the truncated curb, linear curb length there, we were not able to maximize anything. So whether we did back in stalls or parallel stalls, it was always just going to be 4 stalls there. So we are going to leave the parallel parking there, but convert on the other side of 14th to the back end angled. Okay. So now going into pavement finishes. So we're going to kind of zoom in a little bit. So we heard from you in the public survey that pavement finishes is an added bonus to the identity here. And, what we've talked about before is keeping it pretty simple, right? We want to have something elegant. We are thinking of this as more of the canvas that we're going to be putting a lot of other elements on. So think of it as the gallery walls that we'll be adding public art to, different planting to. So we don't want this to be the main feature, but we do want it to be elevated. So in that, we were thinking about how can we utilize the inspiration of the linen blocks and the linen building as kind of a takeoff for our design. So we really started to look at the textures of cloth, how they fold, how they lay, looking at how that can be translated into buildings and concrete, and how can we take those layers and those different lines and the folds and the textures and create something really unique within the concrete itself. And so pulled back, and this is one of our studies, and we're going to be studying this more as we go on. But what we started to look at is how can we indicate and reveal this folding pattern. So instead of just having square planting beds, as you see here in the these hatched, the gray areas are planting areas. We've angled those to give us a little bit more dynamic layering of the planting, and also kind of reveal that idea of folding, and continue to do kind of these folding patterns within the sidewalk through score joints. So it's all going to be just white pavement or concrete pavement, but have a very subtle design as you go through the block. Actually, let me, hopefully it won't turn. Let me go back one here. One thing I did want to point out here, it's a little bit easier to see on our let's see. There we go. The other thing I wanted to point out is where our furnishing zones are. So since we have these bulbed out areas where we are pulling in and out of driveways, we are able to pull a lot of our site furnishings kind of out of this area, especially bike racks, and locate those within these kind of bulbed areas. So we're starting to fine tune that throughout the site, saying, hey, how can we create these little bike corrals within these bulb outs to get it off of the street, again, maximize the parking so we don't have bike corrals sitting within a parking stall any longer, and then also create these kind of seating areas, pull out areas that create these little mini parks throughout the site. That clears us up for having more seating adjacent to the sidewalk instead of bikes all the time. You can kind of see how that then, once we start to illustrate that with the tree canopy, we start to get a very lush shaded streetscape along the site. And one element with the accessible parking stalls is we are proposing elevating those so they are adjacent to the walk-off street. They're flush with that. So this enables us to maximize the planting zone and the sidewalk zone, so we don't have other ramps coming in and out of the accessible parking stall to get you up onto the sidewalk level. So we've accommodated that in a minimal rolled curb. So we don't have a 6-foot long pedestrian ramp that's lifting us up to the sidewalk level. So any questions about pavement finishes? Do you guys, actually, let me go back. Do you guys like that idea? Is it resonating with you, this kind of more minimal color tone, but having a lot of unique textures that would create identity for the linen blocks?
This is Steve Welsh. I think it's really cool.
Thank
And
you.
this is Elizabeth. I agree. I think it's really good looking.
Great. And it actually enables us to save a little bit money on the concrete, so we're not doing multiple colored pours. So it's a really nice way to create a differentiator in this area, but without spending tons of money. So we're excited about that.
We got a good contractor that's great at concrete work, so they're gonna have some
It's all about-
challenges.
It's about
Obviously, squares of
craftsmanship.
concrete are easier to pour than custom scoring jobs, but Guho's up to the task, so.
So we'll be able to do it.
Yeah,
So the next steps with that, though, that we're working with them is going to start doing some mock-ups, like how do we get that linen texture? Is it through different types of broom finishes or different types of stamps, or just how do we do that whole thing? So we're going to start diving into that in the next phase of work, which is always my favorite, doing mock-ups and exploring that with the contractors and really get a level of craftsmanship. So the next section is public art. So we heard from the public that the neon sign museum, they were really enthralled with that idea. So we have started to work with Arts and History to create an art master plan. How can we overlay all these elements within the area? And then we can start looking at budgets. How can we maybe get some private donations from people to enhance some of these artworks? But basically what we are looking at is creating a art billboard on the blank sign that's at 15th. Expanding the public art frames on the walls that may buffer the parking lot and the sidewalk. Creating these art ports, which we're really excited. We've been working with the college and their art department. They say, hey, if you put these art ports out there, we will use them with our sculpture classes. And so they're really excited to have a way to display emerging artists within the downtown area and the Linen Blocks area. And then also the historic Boise Neon Sign Museum. So we have been working with Vanjie, and she is the keeper of all of these historic neon signs from the last 25 years. She's been passionate about this, and maybe a lot of you recognize some of these. So these are all in storage. So we have been looking at the sizes of all of these, and the weights. How can we mount these within the Linen District? Which ones can we use that aren't promoting existing businesses? Can we alter some of them? As you can see, most of them need to be rehabilitated, refurbished. So we are working on that to identify what improvements need to happen to each one of these. But we're really excited to see these, and we think it's going to be a really unique destination for this area.
Does anyone remember those signs or have any recollection of when they were in their original place?
Unfortunately, some of us do.
Is there any that are you probably shouldn't use that?
This is Steve Welsh. Yeah, I certainly recognize the Idaho camera.
Okay.
So looking at, where can we have art? If art is one of those things that's going to differentiate this neighborhood and give it that eclectic feel, where are those opportunities? So already we have murals within the district already, and also kind of over by Rhodes Park, we have that. We identified a couple of other blank building facades. Whoops, sorry, that one actually should be over on this side, that could potentially have some murals on them. So everything in orange is a possibility. We have that big billboard art armature that's just waiting for something amazing to go on to. The art frames that we kind of overlaid this with those walls that separate the parking from the sidewalk. So these are locations that those could be expanded. And then the Historic Sign Museum. So we had a lot of conversation with Art and History and the city of how to do that. So we didn't want to detract from the businesses that already have signage. We didn't want to confuse people, right? Say, oh, is this Idaho Camera, or is there a cafe here, but there's really not a cafe there. So in thinking about that, we thought, well, maybe we group them all together and line them up along the sidewalk adjacent to the Idaho Power parking lot. So we know that's not going to be confusing. We can group them, we can kind of stagger them, we can really make it look like an interactive and exciting destination kind of in this spot within the Linden District. And then also we heard probably 4 to 6 art ports. I think I probably have, I have 7, sorry. So looking at where can these go. So we're going to start dialing that in as, again, we get the surveys and we understand where light poles need to go. We start to dial this in. So we'll be working on this art master plan coming up in this next phase. But wanted to get your take on, what did you think? What do you think about grouping the neon signs in this area and the art ports, and just kind of get your feedback on that?
We do have Andrew with Idaho Power on if he wants to provide some feedback
Yay,
on the
Andrew.
location.
Hi.
It's probably the first time
Hi,
he's
Amy.
hearing this idea.
And
Oh,
Andrew, we were also thinking that, you know, there's no way better to exemplify the Idaho Power, the electricity aspect, and just like lighten this thing up. So what do you think?
That's cool. That's actually I mean, it kind of makes a little bit of sense. Idaho Power actually has quite a bit of historical artifacts on display in our corporate headquarters building. Kind of like the old Watson character, you know, from, you know, I don't know, 80 years ago or whatever. But the Neon Sign Museum, do you want to have it all? I guess it kind of makes sense to put it all in one area to attract people. The only thing is, do you want to attract people to a concentrated point? I can say, since Idaho Power isn't doing, I mean, the usage of that block is for parking. I could see like a retail business maybe wanting to attract people closer to their location, but maybe not. I don't know, just throwing it out there.
Yeah, good question. Maybe anybody that's in the retail business.
So
industry.
Kim Reeves just popped a comment in the chat, says she loves the idea of the neon sign museum lining the edge of the big parking lot, makes the walk by a parking lot interesting and engaging. And as you said, it avoids confusion of whether the signs are advertising active businesses. So there's a couple
Yeah,
of
this
things there.
is Steve Welsh. I think that by putting it all, by concentrating it there, I think it makes it look more like a gallery, or like it is an art installation versus scattering it up and down the street.
Yeah, we'll have the other art ports that kind of are breadcrumbs leading you down the street too. So, but yeah, I like that idea with just kind of creating that gallery, right? You go there to see, that's like the room of the gallery. And then you have all these other rooms with either the art ports or the art frames.
That's a good comment.
Oh yeah, concentrating it kind of makes it like the neon sign version of Freak Alley. I love that.
Neon street, neon block.
We have to figure out, no,
Yeah.
it's not as cool as Freak Alley.
Not
We'll
creative.
figure something out. We'll brand it.
So Christine, would the museum be all in public right away?
Yes, it would.
I was wondering if I could get this, Elizabeth, the contact for who you worked with the city to be able to hang those neons. I'm wondering if this is a good time to change our sign back to the original sign, the 1935 sign that was neon.
So I will caveat that even though these are signs, they're public art. So with your business sign, it's a sign, not public art. So there's a fine line of distinction there in the city's design review eyes. And that's one that we're walking very carefully and working with Josh Wilson, who's the city's design review.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me do that before, so I was just hoping I could.
So
I could
don't
sneak
think we're
in on that
cheating code for
coattail. Yeah.
that.
I mean, I think there's always opportunities though to create art and interest in other ways, Elizabeth, like, your wall that's in front of the Modern, and, can we do some of the art frames on that? So I think there's lots of different ways to contribute to the public art master plan with all of us working on this, the property owners, the designers, and the city. Any other comments? If we wanted to enhance or create more murals within this block, so already there's some murals on some of the buildings, but on other buildings where we look down the street and we have some blank facades, is that something that the property owners, you guys, would be interested in? If we were able to get a call for artists and get some mural artists available as part of this, would that be something that you would be interested in offering up? And you don't have to commit now, or you could say, yeah, we might be interested. Is that something that you would be open to?
Well, I might be interested. The only issue I think I have with it is, when somebody tags the building, then, right now I've got touch-up paint and I can go out and just paint it out. If there's a art installation on the building, then essentially I think you've got to go get the artist again to take out the graffiti tag.
Interesting part about murals is that they often aren't tagged because artists respect other artists' work. So
Yeah,
they'd rather go tag a blank concrete cinder wall than someone's artwork, because that's
I didn't.
in line with their own work. So
Yeah,
that's
we-
one of the actual graffiti deterrent is by doing murals on buildings. Dave, you want to chime in?
Yeah, we found that to be the case. No one's really tagged the Basque Alley that we created over at City Center and the buildings that we already have over in the Linden District that have the murals have survived well. Where we have no murals, you're right. The back alleys, we get tagged on a regular basis. So maybe even the back alleys, we end up with murals at the end of the day.
If it is an area that a property owner is interested in order to expend CCDC funds, it needs to be dedicated as a public easement so that public art is actually part of the public right away. So there is some logistics to go through in order to be able to use CCDC money, but private property owners are also welcome to go through the process on their own. I know Oliver Russell's done a bunch of murals on his building to the south of Grove, between 11th and 12th there. So,
Yeah, he asked me about continuing the murals up the alley, and that was one of my hesitations was if somebody tags it, then I'd have to go get the artist to fix it. But I didn't realize that they don't tag murals, and I don't think Oliver Russell's has been tagged that I've seen.
yeah. And it provides it to be more of a destination too. I know, like, you can do like QR codes built into them, and then kind of do like a breadcrumb, like Christine's talking, like lead them to the next public art, and you can really make this linear art gallery feel as having them along this whole corridor.
Really good Instagrammable moments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So as we kind of start to look at these areas, we're looking at, again, we don't have an actual sign, available neon sign, but we're looking at how can these fit. So we're looking at the height of these signs. Some of them are a lot longer, so would they overhang? Some of them are more linear. And so we're working with the contractor right now to, they're going to go out once we identify the ones that we think are the best candidates. We're going to have a contractor go out, take a look at those, weigh them, measure them, get a really accurate understanding of what it will take to refurbish. And then we will start to design the art port or the foundation that they would sit on. And these will be, like Amy said, part of the public art. So now if we go into planting, so we've been working with the city to talk about lots of different things. We are invested in doing silvocels for the trees, doing a variety of trees with as large of caliber as we can get into the areas. Planting areas with pet rails, parks and public works have supported that now. Habitat for native pollinators, we've been working with Public Works and they've been supportive and helping us get that engaged. And a big win that I'm really excited about is consolidated irrigation. And so as we were talking about before the start of this meeting, typically all along the streets, each planting area outside of businesses, that there's a point of connection for irrigation that goes out there. We wanted to consolidate all of that and have it just run on one system. That way we can ensure that all these trees, all the planting areas will get watered. And if a building is sold and somebody comes in and just turns off the water, we don't want all of the plants to die in front of one building, right? So we've worked with parks and with the city, and they are supporting this consolidated irrigation. So we're really super excited about that. I cannot tell you how excited. So we will be taking it away from you and all of your buildings and giving it back to the city. So we've been working at the tree and the plant palette. And so what we're looking at, and we've been talking about before, is creating kind of this identity, these kind of nodal trees that are at the intersections. And we're looking at a very large tree species, potentially a northern red oak. And then with the intermediate interstitial trees being honey locusts that are staggered along the streetscape. Both of these are very large canopy and will provide a lot of shade, and we're really excited about that. Then as we looked at pollinator plantings and how do we ensure that people understand their use and don't get confused, because sometimes pollinator planting areas can look a little wild, right? And most of us in the urban environment are used to much more structured planting. And so we wanted to see how can we do a little bit of both. So people understand that where the pollinator planting areas are, they're working in a specific way. So Parks has done this in areas throughout the city, and they have these signage program that basically informs people of what the planting is doing. So no, it's not just a wild, unkept meadow of flowers, but it is a monarch habitat, or it's a butterfly habitat, or a bird habitat. And so we're going to be starting to look at each one of these pollinator areas as we march down and create different habitats that we will identify, sign, and really educate the public. And so what we're thinking is that we would have this more structured planting areas in those narrower planting zones. So these, we're looking at mock orange, dwarf mock orange, which has a really beautiful white flower, again, and reminiscent of the linen. And so those would all be structured with some additional perennials in those, but really have these high concentration of pollinator gardens throughout the blocks where we have a little bit deeper planting and we can really get that sense of wonder and habitat. So I wanted to get your take on this idea. Is that resonating with you all?
I like it. Steve Welsh here. Yeah, I think it's, yeah, great. I did have a question about the integrated irrigation. Will
Mhm.
that extend this around the side streets, say to the alley? It's like on 12th Street here, the
That's a
trees
good
are,
question.
the trees on Grove are connected to the irrigation is connected to 12th Street. Would that all be one irrigation system?
That's a good question. We're gonna have to take a look at that. The funds are only for kind of Grove. We do have these bulb outs, so they would extend over to the bulbs. But you're right, your trees that are going down, I think, Amy, would that again maybe be something that we could coordinate with business owners and have, we can maybe take that
I
piece
think
by,
we'd look at it, yeah, on a case by case basis. I
Yeah.
think Steve's
Yeah.
situation is pretty unique. So yeah,
I
we'll
think
take a look at it.
I think all that needs to be done is if the tree is capped at the alley and then the irrigation is just connected to the Grove Street side, it's fairly simple.
It'd likely be on the same main line. It would be pretty complex to add a separate backflow preventer for like 2 trees. Or
Yeah,
however many go past that bulb. But let's look at it on a case by case basis as we get into the more detailed design and we really know the limits on those side streets.
and then I think what I'm hearing is that the CCDC or well, CCDC, I guess, would do the sprinkler blowout, and would the watering be from the adjacent property owners, or where would the water come from then?
that would be a city point of connection and they would take care of all the irrigation, blowing it out, winterizing it is what you're talking about, and starting it back up in the spring.
That'd be great.
So yeah, we've definitely been having those conversations with the city because after CCDC constructs it, we're not like a maintainer of these. We just turn it over to the various jurisdictions. So we've been having those detailed conversations with the city to make sure they're comfortable with taking on maintenance of these. But yeah, it was a huge win to get that consolidated system. Just reduces a bunch of clutter from the right of way.
Yeah, while we appreciate you having all the controllers and the point of connections in your building, so it doesn't clutter up the street, we understand that it's probably cluttering up your basement. So,
Well, it's just it would be easier if it was in the street, because the people that show up to blow out the sprinklers, show up, they could show up any time of day and do it versus having to coordinate it to get inside the building.
right. So just looking at what, how this lays out on this block. So again, having these, whoops, sorry. Too many clicks of the mouse here. So again, we're proposing the pet rails only on the sidewalk side and not on the walk-off strip side, or the in between the parking and the bike lane. We think that's going to be the most useful and best use of funds to consolidate it there, where the pets are usually walking on the sidewalk, not necessarily on the bike lane. So we think that will provide enough buffer to maintain that. Now, one thing I have to say though, is that as we've cruised down Boise and all the streets, we've talked about this previously, there's either lawn or there's pavement within the right of way, where areas like on Capitol Boulevard, we have planting. We've been told time and time again that it isn't very successful. And I think part of that, I know part of it is the consistency of watering. So we're going to take care of that part on the design in the city. But we will need property owners to kind of keep an eye out on these areas, trim them back, take garbage out of them, really be stewards of this thing that we're creating. It's different. And so in cities like San Francisco, Seattle, Denver, property owners are required to take care of the planting out in front of their businesses and their property. Boise's a little different. It's been something that the city's taking care of. They don't necessarily have the funds to take care of this every single day. And so I just want to let you guys be aware of that. And can you imagine a way that this area could create some sort of stewardship or committee that helps people if they don't know about planting or gardening, or you get volunteers, you can organize volunteers to come out to do a cleanup party? Is that something that as business owners and kind of stakeholders you'd be interested in? The thing we don't want to do is create all these planting areas that just die. So we're going to need some help. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, my thought is I'm doing it now anyway. So yeah, I'd be willing to do it.
Great,
Yeah, we'd be willing to do it as well.
excellent. So we have 2 people that will do it. This is
Come on, Dave, get on your gardening gloves and lend a hand.
I'm sure we will take part.
Andrew, can we organize an Idaho Power garden cleanup, workforce, planting cleanup?
Maybe a volunteer opportunity.
There you
Our
go.
maintenance budget gets squeezed every year though, so.
But you guys have volunteer elements that you do throughout the city, right?
Well, like Rake Up Boise, stuff like that,
Yeah.
just employees trying to pull together and do something like this. I mean, this could be a candidate for something like that.
Great.
So Kim dropped something in the chat. She said, can the planting areas be adopted by an educational horticulture group through like a
Great
school
idea.
or university, like they're providing the art for the sculpture areas? It would be a way to teach them and show off horticulture art. And I know when we talked to Jennifer Tomlinson at Parks that they do utilize a lot of volunteers to maintain their native gardens currently. So
Yeah.
So I
Mary
noticed,
said they'd be willing to participate. See, everyone's gonna
noticed-
care about these plantings.
I noticed that some of the streets have the angled parking, but they don't, the side streets have angled parking, but they don't all have angled parking, it doesn't look like.
That's right. We were able to squeeze it in at some locations but like I said before, it doesn't always make sense to do that because you can create a lot of disruption and spend a lot of money, but actually not get back a lot of parking. And unfortunately, between the alley and the intersection, with any sort of driveways or any sort of access through that makes it a little bit more difficult. Just that span isn't very great. Where we have the most success is where we do not have any driveways, and we can do in excess of 6 to 8 parking stalls if they can fit in that area. Then it usually makes sense.
Yeah.
And really, we were just trying to achieve and maximize parking, like offset the loss of off-street parking that was occurring in that block between 14th and 15th. And that's why we chased it down 14th, was really to try and offset that loss for those retail establishments.
That makes sense.
Jordan had a good comment that master naturalists and master gardeners actually have to do so many volunteer hours to get their certification. So it seems like
Excellent.
there might be an opportunity there to help them get their certification hours that they need and provide some good service.
Yeah, and it might be something when we have the grand opening of this, or if we have a big kickoff for, we have, boy, you guys should, somebody needs to organize a garden show out here or a plant swap or something on weekends to really kind of drive that home and get some signups. And because really, we can build all this stuff, but somebody needs to kind of program all of that and organize that. And that's gonna, we're outside of the Downtown Business Association, or it kind of straddles this. And so I think working with them, and maybe there's a little bit of a Linen District organization, neighborhood organization that can spur some of these, because sometimes it's just organizing it and knowing who to contact when. And so I think that would be really helpful to create that for this area. Because you're going to get a lot more people down here very quickly if you build all of it. And we just want to make sure it keeps looking great. So the thing, again, we talked about these art courts and where those would be located. We believe those would be located in this kind of site furnishing zone. Sorry for this overhang that would knock somebody. That would not happen. So we'll make sure that there are requirements that are being met, so it's safe and also really a cool activity as you walk down the site. Okay, so the other thing I wanted your feedback on is a preference. So like I said, we're going to be doing these pet rails along the planting adjacent to the sidewalk. Want to get your preference of kind of the style. Do we want to go with something a little bit more traditional, like the Boise streetscape standard that you can see along Capitol, or do we want to have something a little bit more modern? And so kind of seeing what your take on these two different styles and kind of direction that we should go in.
Personally, I like the more modern one.
More modern.
Again, I agree.
Okay.
Jeremy with Mr. Car Wash said he likes also the NR25, the more modern one.
Great.
It
Yeah, and I
looks
think
like-
this is,
yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, David.
Looks like it protect the plants better too.
Something higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kim agrees with the more modern one.
Great, okay.
Fine
I think,
with the feedback we got from the accessibility community too, which didn't like as many vertical pickets because it would risk the chance of a cane being caught in there.
yeah.
We get the
Excellent.
monorail too.
Say again, David?
Do we get the monorail too as part of the NR2-5?
I don't think that's within
Sure.
budget.
That's in phase 500, David.
Yeah,
The monorail
okay.
going from the Linen District downtown.
Would be cool.
I'm glad you noticed that and know your Seattle, downtown Seattle areas. Okay, so now just a quick kind of going through site furnishings, get your take, a yay or nay. So what we had talked about before is taking cues from the Linen Building, just having something very sophisticated with whites, grays, and blacks for greater legibility and very classic look. So we're proposing staying with the historic.
Hello, how are you
picture.
today?
Oops, sorry, crazy neighbor. Let's see.
Hi there.
And so, yeah, we're proposing using the Boise streetscape standard, but we are going to request it be painted black instead of green. Pretty much all of furnishings, we're going to want painted black if possible. Same thing with this. Use all the streetscape standards, but painted black. Where we want to get your take are kind of seating elements. So the the design team's kind of teetering on two different ways of looking at it. Do we want to create something unique and have more of this kind of folded linen-esque cast in place or precast concrete benches that we can use different angles and maximize seating in different ways? Or do we want to stick with that downtown Boise streetscape standard? Wanted to get your feedback on that.
Well, I like the, again, the more modern, especially where you're not going to have the brick pavers, you're going to have the impression concrete, where I think this, the more folded concrete bench works better.
Good point. Yeah, it kind of flows up and it kind of creates that sidewalk and bench kind of being one thing, right? As that folded linen feel.
I agree. I like the folded concrete bench.
Any votes for the downtown Boise streetscape standard one?
You know, the other thing I'd say about the traditional bench, I have them out in front on Grove Street, and you know, they periodically have to be refinished, and they weather pretty quickly, and I don't think you'd have that issue with the concrete bench.
I will add that we'll be putting skate stops at regular intervals on these concrete benches because, as you probably know, anything that doesn't have a skate stop deterrent gets skateboarders grinding.
Oh, yeah.
on it, and these would be a perfect opportunity for that. So we'll be incorporating that into the design for sure. Kim in the chat said she prefers the modern folded bench leads the eye rather than being on a fixed point. That's a good point.
Great. Okay, very clear. Thank you. Is there another chat? Yeah, skate stop's important, especially with skate park around the corner. Yes,
Point.
very good point. Okay, so that was all of kind of the feedback we want for individual items. Now we wanted to kind of step back and ask you all, are we meeting these design principles? So we try to keep these all in mind. Just want to make sure that we're hitting the mark on all these. So integrating historical uses and forms and cultural storytelling elements to create a distinct place. Ensuring the street is designed for a range of mobility options. I have to say we're doing that already. So I give ourselves a thumbs up for that one. Activate the area through public and private gathering spaces, programming and events. Design the streetscape and public space to support and attract an 18-hour environment and employ environmentally sustainable design. So I wanted to get your feedback. Is there any of these that we're not hitting that we need to try harder at? Are we doing a good job? What do you think?
No, I think you're doing a great job. I think these all work in your
Great.
design.
Agreed.
Great,
I also agree.
excellent. Okay, looks good to everybody for the design principles. Now, the last thing we had showed you is, you know, we did all of these case studies of what makes good street typologies. And we now have filled in our row. These red ones, we do not indicate these right now. Wanted to double back with you. Of course, we don't have to have everything green, and sometimes it just doesn't make sense to have everything green. So I just wanted to kind of double back with you, make sure that if something isn't green, that's okay, or there's a reason, or if it's something that we want to fight for. So the first red one is under site furnishings, and it's water fountains. So we went back and forth with these. It was on our list of nice to have, especially with the pandemic and how concerned people are. It seems like people are getting away from that a little bit, but we'd like to hear your comments on, should we include water fountains? Should we try to squeeze those into the right away. And we were even looking at maybe not water fountains, but bottle fillers too. So it could go either way.
Does that add a significant level of complexity and maintenance long-term? I mean, this is a, 4-season area. It's not that long an area, and there's plenty of places along the way to acquire water as well as coffee, and I'm not sure it's worth all the expense and complexity of maintenance long-term.
It's kind of what we were thinking too. The funds might be better spent someplace else.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't use them, so
I'd rather have a real fountain versus a water fountain.
Right. Gotcha. A decorative
Yeah.
aesthetic or, yeah. The other ones that we had here are freestanding planters and hanging flower baskets. I think we're doubling down even more on all of that with our extended planting. So I felt pretty good with those. Next one is a bike fix-it station. While this is on a bike route, we didn't know if that was something that we wanted to add here. There are other bike fix-it stations elsewhere in downtown. Wanted to get your take on that.
I think there's a bike shop at 13th Street.
There you go.
True.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, right? Just to have them go there.
Right.
Good answer. Good answer. Pet amenities. So we have the pet rail. We have not included pet waste stations or a pet water fountain. I know that a lot of the retail establishments do put out bowls for pets, so that's really nice. What do you think about the pet waste stations and water fountains? And is that something that we should incorporate kind of pet areas within the right of way? Or should we just say, you know what, this isn't the place that you're going to be taking your pets?
Well, I think they'll take their pets regardless. Most of the patio space will always have water available. But we probably need more pet waste stations throughout the entire downtown, simply because I know people just leave the waste there from a lack of having a bag on hand for some reason.
Gotcha. Okay. So we will look at pet waste stations locations. Okay. And then, yeah, those are pretty much the only other ones that we had. We're going to be doing everything else.
Kim asked if pet waste stations can be incorporated into a regular type of trash can thing. Typically, they're like on a standalone pole that has a container that houses them.
Usually, but that's a really great question. We can look and see if there's a product that has that. That's a really great question. Because why do it multiple places if you can have it one place? That's great. Make a note of that. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. So we will take all of this feedback and show our preferred elements, the benches, the pet rails, location of the neon signs, the pavement finishes, everything that we've gone over here. We will consolidate all of your preferences, and that's what we're going to be presenting to CCDC, ACHD, and the City Council, and also what we will be putting into our design review submittal. And we will have a great open house in the early December to show you all of the latest renderings. We're still working on those, and so stay tuned. You'll get an invite to that. You'll see kind of all the pretty pictures all combined into one package. Any other chats that we had here?
well, I think you guys did a great job.
Thank you very much. Very much. Well,
Thank you guys for staying engaged throughout the entire like visioning process. And then as we transferred to concept design, a lot of the success of this project is having stakeholders be so engaged and provide us with feedback that we can then turn into some of the design principles, which then align with the concept design that we come up with. So it's been great having this dedicated group stay so engaged throughout such a long process. So we'd like to acknowledge that and thank you for your time.
So I have another question. So originally there was in some of the designs, there was, and I might have missed it, there was a marquee for the entrance to the blocks? Has that gone away?
Yeah, so as part of our conversations with the city, they didn't want to have any gateway signage that went over the roadway. So some of the elements, yeah, didn't get continued forward as we had those conversations with the agencies.
You're
Our
probably not
city,
going-
our city is a sign snob.
Yeah, they just thought that it might invite every little district and every little neighborhood to have big
Yeah,
requests for gateway signs. And so they wanted to keep it rather clean and minimize that.
yeah,
So,
there's also some concerns with things going over the roadway as well. But I think we have pushed this, the standards a lot on this project, and I am really just overwhelmed by what the city is willing to do and the effort they are putting forth in creating this really unique district. I mean, the unique pavement, the narrower streets, just everything, the consolidated irrigation, the planting. We're so grateful to the city and their willingness to kind of go out there and do something new and different. So we're really excited about it. And it really helps having you guys back us up as well. So when we go to city council, we are able to say, hey, we heard from the public and we heard from our stakeholders, and this is the package that they want to put forward. And that really goes a long way to giving the city some comfort that they're doing something unique that's going to be loved. So thank you again.
You are loved.
I was waiting for someone to say that. And it is kind of funny that through the visioning process, we always envisioned that gravel parking lot at the corner there of 16th to be a location where food carts were housed. And it turns out that the property owner caught our vision without even being part of this process and is planning to install food cart stations there and enhancing their parking on that lot. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, really great. And I think when we're working with the other developers as they're building their buildings to really try to maximize the streetscape and that collaboration between private and public, which is going to be really going to make everything successful down here. Right. Well, we will see you the next round, and you might be getting calls from us as we figure out the survey and have more detailed questions property by property. So thank you again, everybody, and we will see you soon.
And we will
Thank you.
send this presentation out to the group, right, Christine, for those who couldn't make it. And
Yes.
plan on uploading the video recording to CCDC's website so that people can access it there too if they want to watch the whole presentation.
And Amy, if you want to talk to me one-on-one about that irrigation and how, I think it would be really simple to connect it. But
Yeah, I agree for sure. I just don't think we're quite there on detailed
yet.
design, but it's on our radar and we'll make a note on coordinating that with you.
so it's evident to me right now because I just had to do it. So
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you again next time.
all right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.